Welcome back to the Four Gardens podcast. I'm Jake Ifshin. In this episode, we'll continue to focus on health, which is the first garden of the Four Gardens approach. My guest today is Shirin Biswas, and we'll be talking about self-care. Shirin is a mechanical design engineer who graduated with a master's degree from Duke University. Besides engineering, Shirin is fluent in the field of martial arts and mental arts, and he practices these philosophies in his work with men's circles. He's associated with the Mankind Project, where he works with the Gold Mining Men's Circle and the Gold Mining King Building Circle to co-create a world of purpose and peace. Shirin embodies the spirit of a healing panda, and his mission is to co-create a community where people practice self-care daily. He shares his knowledge of engineering design tools to help people discover self-care activities that are meaningful to them, and he empowers them to apply these practices in their daily routine. Shirin also hosts a gender-neutral circle called Applied Self-Care Community in Charlotte, North Carolina, where he brings a calming and playful energy to this mission work to co-create a space where people can embark on their own self-care journeys together. I love the way Shirin approaches self-care and self-love, really thinking through them in a practical way that is easy to implement and really resonates with me in my work with the Four Gardens. I'm joined today by Ari Rubens. He's the co-host and co-producer with me in this project. And I'd like to hear from you, Ari. How was this conversation for you?
Well, I've known Shirin for some time, and he has always showed up to me with radiant love and compassion. I always loved when I was in circle with him, which is a circle we're both a part of, where he's really great at mirroring and just being a loving friend. So I've always really looked up to him, and I'm really glad we got him on the show. What really stood out to me was my own reflection of what self-love is, and he just expands on this. He expands on this topic. I think it's so important for physical health and mental health to have a regular routine of self-care, and Shirin really breaks down the basics and really goes deep into it. I think this is essential for the health season.
He's a really perfect, I would say more powerful than perfect teacher of these things because he brings this playful, kind energy to self-care, which I think self-care, and we think about practices or routines, can feel repetitive. I think I've experienced them as repetitive, or as like I'm doing the things I need to do to be healthy. But Shirin brings a sense of joy to all of it, a sense of creativity that really works for me, that he thinks about it and expresses it in a way that allows other people to join him in this journey to grow more self-love in their lives and more self-care. So I find it to be very effective. I also want to remind people to like and subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. Leave comments. Check out all the links we're sharing below to connect to Shirin's work and to our work. Definitely, any of that all helps. Share this episode if it made an impact on you. That would really help us. With that, let's jump right in with Shirin Biswas.
When I think of self-love, I'm thinking it's a way for me to fill up my own love tank uh, without having to rely on my partner or my family. So Gary Chapman, who wrote The Five Love Languages, he talks about this concept of love tank, and he says that every human has a love tank that overfills with love when they experience an extraordinary amount of love, either from their partner or families. I feel that the same thing can be achieved through self-love. And it's when I'm able to fill my own love tank or experience that extraordinary amount of love because something I did for myself or something I said to myself. That's how I define self-love.
So when you talk about a full love tank,
Yeah.
can you say a little more about what that means, what that creates for you when you feel like or how you even know when your love tank's full or when it's empty?
To me, it's just a sense of ecstasy where I feel content. If I check in with myself and see how I'm doing, and if I ask myself the question, do I need anything right now? The answer that comes from within is no, I'm full, I'm content, and I have everything that I need in this moment. To me, that's how I experience a full overflowing love tank.
It's an interesting way of approaching this because I think of self-love as the love to myself, whether it's my ego or my higher self. We could get into that self-directed love. But I think it's really an interesting way of approaching it. And it does connect to me to self-care too, very clearly, that you're thinking of it more as like love as a resource, love as a supply, as opposed to love as maybe a philosophy or a way of directing your energy. It's something different for you. And it's a bit, actually, I'd say more practical the way you approach it too.
Yeah, yeah. I like your analogy of love as being something that I can tap into, um, because it made me think of flowers and fragrances for some reason, and it reminded me of the time that I can smell flowers and I have the sense of smell that I'm grateful for. But if I have a stuffy nose from allergies and I can try to smell a bouquet of flowers and I won't get anything, versus if I try to smell the same flowers when my nose is clear, I'm able to take in all the fragrances. So I feel like in both the cases, the flowers didn't really change. They were the same. It was my ability to perceive and inhale and experience that. Um, and to me, I perceive love as the same way. There's so much love in this universe. It's just a way for me to tap into it and to allow it to come from within, or to allow it to accept it, I guess.
Yeah, that resonates for me, that our orientation towards love, to our receptivity towards love, this is all part
Yeah.
of the self-love
Yeah.
idea too.
Yeah.
Uh,
Absolutely.
Was there a point in your life, a time in your life, or a story you could tell when self-love was really important to you, or maybe your perception or ideas about it evolved?
Yes. Absolutely. I feel like self love has always been important for me, just as a part of me being human. But I survived a really long time without doing it or using it or utilizing it, um, until I had a turning point in the summer of 2020. And that was right after the pandemic. And there was a point during that summer where I felt the loneliest I have ever in my life. And it wasn't because I was actually lonely, because I was surrounded by my girlfriend, my friends that I got to see, and my family. And these are people that I had in my life who I was connected to, and I knew that they genuinely loved me and cared for me. But I just wasn't able to feel that. I felt very disconnected. And in that moment, I felt a longing for, it's like, I wish there was someone in my life who would love me so much that I wouldn't feel this disconnection and this loneliness. And shortly after that, I found myself in men's circles and therapy. And through that, I discovered that the person that I was longing for could be me. Instead of having to find another person who would love me and give me what I'm missing, I had an idea. It's like, what if I start from within myself, and the love that I'm seeking outside, what if I try to give that to myself and see what happens? And two things happened when I started to do that. First, it felt like when I go to a gym after a really long break and I experience soreness in my muscles, I'm like, holy smokes, I didn't even realize I had a muscle there that's hurting. So when I started practicing self love, that's what it felt like, that I had this muscle in my body that I had not used in ages. And now my body is like, whoa, what's going on? What are you doing to us? But just like I train my muscles in the gym, one rep at a time, I use the same philosophy with self love and my work there. Just one practice at a time, one small activity for myself at a time, and build up from there. And what happened after that was I felt more connected to my friends, the friends who were already in my life. It's not that I made new friends, these were the same people. And their love for me probably did not change drastically. But since I was loving myself more and I felt more self content and self sufficient, I was able to appreciate the love and care that they were giving me. Uh, Again, similar to the flower analogy, like I feel like something was stuffed in my nose and it just cleared up, and I was able to smell fragrances more clearly. Uh, so I think practicing self love equipped my body to receive love from other people more so too.
When you were feeling that disconnect too, what was that? And you talk about almost clearing your sinuses, clearing the
Yeah,
blockages.
yeah,
So I just am curious about that whole. I want to dig into that a little more around
yeah,
what was blocking it
yeah.
and how the practices. Um, so maybe even some examples too of how the feeling shifted certain moments where you get that first that breath in, that the aroma
Yeah.
uh, really hits you.
Right, right. So when I think about that time when I felt very lonely and disconnected from my friends, um, it almost felt very constrictive. Um, and looking back, hindsight, I know it was coming from a place of some of the core beliefs that I used to have about myself. One of the core beliefs or the stories that my inner voice kept telling me was that I'm not worthy of love, or I'm not good enough, or that I have to change something about myself and I have to be better. I have to improve. I have to be a different person, and then I will be worthy of love. And I do like the part of me that strives to be better every day, but that was stopping me from accepting myself who I was at the present moment or who I am today. And I think that was the core belief that I had to change. Um, so while I was trying so hard, asking for love, and while my friends and girlfriends were trying their best to give me the love that I wanted, I was just not, a part of me was not allowing me to receive it because it kept telling me that, oh, there's something wrong with me, or I need to change this part of me, or I don't deserve to be loved, or I don't deserve this. And that's what that disconnect felt like. That my love tank was empty and I was asking people to fill it for me, but I had the lid shut. So it's almost like I was in my own way, literally. And the shift for me through therapy was working through old trauma and working through all the messages that I had received from people that no longer applied to me. So I had to let go of that and let myself accept that I am enough today and I'm worthy of love today. And yes, I can still continue to be a better person, but that doesn't stop me from receiving the love today. And the shift there was I allowed my friends and my family members and my girlfriend to be who they are and accepting who they are without putting that pressure on them. And just being grateful. Because I think in the past, I was coming from a place of insufficiency, or I was coming from a place of I don't have enough love or I don't have enough. And that perspective, changing my core belief, changed my perspective to where I was now able to come from a place of I am enough and what I have today is enough. And I'm grateful for what I have today. So I think those were the two things that shifted along the way for me.
You said a lot of important things there. You started by talking about, I want to reflect back on too, of you talked
Yeah.
about the addiction to striving is where you started in your comment too, that love needs to be earned. I think you named a lot of really powerful stories that were harmful stories that I held about myself, that I needed. Love was something to be earned. I didn't deserve it. These kind of ideas, that being closed, which I think is not grateful. Gratitude, like you mentioned, gratitude is a medicine, I think, to a lot of these dimensions of this. But I think too that the idea that this for me brings up the distinction between loving the ego and loving the self, loving the, because I feel like that addiction is driving, that like the ego wanting me to earn love, the ego needing the reward, the ego needing others to affirm it. Like I experienced this. I think it's pretty universal, of the ego. That to me is like that egocentrism can be painful. It causes a lot of suffering because that seems to be blocking. It's blocked for me in the past, that my ego needs to be inflated, or needs to be whatever it is, needs to be built up. Like that kind of love blocks the authentic love, which to me like feels more like a higher self, or my true self wanting to come out of like the, so yeah. But I feel like in your answer, you really cleanly outlined some of the power that we have to unblock that container of love. Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, Jake, I want to say thank you for paraphrasing what I said. An excellent job listening, because I feel like I was going off on a lot of tangents, but you did an excellent job bringing them all together and tying it together and stitching it. And I love your connection between blockages and how it ties into self-absorption and egocentrism, and how this constant strive from improvement could be coming from a place of ego. So I love that connection. Thank you for bringing that up. Um, I think it is a very important question, one that I have pondered upon for a while. And I would highly encourage anybody who is on the journey of self-love and self-care to ponder upon this question and see what it means for them. The way I perceive it, or the way I have been able to reconcile with it, is I use Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So Maslow created a pyramid with 5 layers, and on each layer he defines the basic human needs. It starts with physiological needs, that's water, food, clothing, shelter. Safety needs, that's for my need to be safe physically and emotionally. There's a need of love and belonging, that ties into of wanting to be part of something bigger or wanting to be a part of society. Then there's a need for esteem, and it could be self-respect, self-esteem, in being a productive member. And the last one is self-actualization. So when I'm thinking of self-love and self-absorption, I think both of them come from a place of need and desire. So I sense that I have a need, I have a desire to fulfill that need, and I act on that desire. So does that act count as self-love, or does that count as narcissism or egocentrism? I don't know. So what I ask myself is that, can my need be classified in this pyramid that Maslow created? Or is that need outside of the pyramid? So if it's within that pyramid, I can safely say that that was an act of self-love that I did for my well-being, that's something that I needed to do for myself. But if that does not fall within that pyramid of physiological needs and safety needs and esteem needs or self-actualization needs, then I catch myself as like, okay, now this is coming from a place of ego. This is not something that I need. This is something that my ego self wants to stroke itself. And I can then decide to not act on that desire and, come back to the center.
What I find really helpful about that too, that you mentioned the fourth layer, I think, was the need for esteem below the layer of self-actualization.
Mhm.
I think it's good for me to remember too that in the way I was laying things out, sometimes I notice myself creating some shame around that desire for esteem, the desire for glory or recognition, when that can be a great positive motivator too. That can be that in balance. I think that is a very human thing to want, is recognition for good deeds, and I think in balance. I think when that becomes mistaken for self-actualization, if self-actualization isn't happening, then I think is that possible with the pyramid too, in the way you see it? If one layer of the pyramid gets too dominant, that could also be a sort of like, we talk about balance on this podcast. So imbalance in the pyramid could also be a problematic too. Would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, beautiful catch about the self-esteem layer being below the self-actualization, because that is the foundation upon which one could build self-actualization if they want to get to that level. And B, also beautifully said about balance, because again, from a point perspective of engineering, we would want the base to be the heaviest, and as we keep going upwards, the top layer should be getting narrower and lighter. And if you have any imbalance there, it could definitely topple the pyramid. And it could absolutely happen, psychologically speaking, if one layer of the pyramid, let's say love and belonging, gets too heavy, where physiological needs or esteem are not getting enough room to survive. So I think it's definitely important for people to, especially for me, to be mindful that all of my layers are being kept in balance, for sure.
Thanks for sharing that. It's really interesting. I haven't thought of that. I've heard of the Maslow's hierarchy, but I haven't thought of it that in that perspective. So thanks for that fresh awareness of it too. And I want to broaden the conversation now, because another important term to you is self-care. And I'm already hearing how self-care is part of self-love. Self-love is a practice, self-care. But bring that word in now too. Just expand the conversation too, please, to include that, your meaning. I like to hear your meaning of self-care definition.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for phrasing your question that way. I love how you say you want to hear my meaning of self-care, because I feel like in my experience talking to different people and listening to podcasts and going to seminars, I have observed people interchange the terms self-love and self-care, and their definitions vary from people to people. I don't know what the correct definition is, and quite frankly, I don't know if there is a correct definition, but I'll be happy to share what my definition is. And I'll use an engineering analogy to share that. So in my line of work, I'm surrounded by machines, and I must perform some tasks daily to make sure that these machines run smoothly and that their lifespan is not shortened, and they're everything's going good. We call it preventative maintenance, and it is exactly what it sounds like. It is maintenance that I do to prevent any mishaps or prevent from the machine to degrade or break down. I view self-love as preventative maintenance that I do on myself, so my body, my mind, my soul, it is functioning smoothly and at 100%. So to me, self-love is more preventative. Uh, Now, despite my best efforts, sometimes the machine will break down, either due to natural wear and tear or maybe some external circumstance or incident that was beyond my control. And when that happens, I have to do something what's called corrective maintenance. Again, it is exactly what it sounds like. We engineers try to make things oversimplified. Corrective maintenance are things that I do to correct something that's been damaged, to repair the machine and get it back to 100%. So I see self care as things that I want to do for myself when I'm not feeling my 100%. When I feel that either through normal course of the day I'm feeling discharged, or maybe a triggering incident happened which is making me feel off balance and off key, and the things and the coping mechanisms that I've discovered for myself to help me bring back to center. uh, that's how I view self-care. So the more I on the at my work, the more I perform maintenance, the less often I have to do corrective maintenance. So similarly, the more I perform self-love intentionally daily, the less I have to perform self-care. But that's how those two tools in my toolkit go hand in hand together.
And it really brings up for me too the intention of health around this season, because I think that framework you laid out of preventative versus corrective
Yeah.
is at the crux of how I want to see our healthcare systems and our healthcare practices updated. Is that I'd love to see more emphasis in our entire society and world around the practices we can do with our lifestyle design, our food, our routines, our exercise, all the kind of preventative stuff we can do to so that to me is a great analogy for that of to lower our costs, lower all the corrective medical things operations and medications we engage in to stay healthy. So I'd love to hear you two fit this in a little bit with mental and physical health around self-care and how you make that connection.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that perspective, because I think sometimes self-love and self-care, or the topic of self-love and self-care, can become philosophical discussion. So I love the idea of tying it to something physical health, or to emotional health, something tangible that people can actually apply and practice in their daily lives. So let me use another analogy here. Think of my cell phone, right? So I have a cell phone and it runs on battery. If I use my cell phone daily, it consumes the battery, and at the end of the day, I have to recharge it before I can use it again the next day. If I don't use my cell phone at all, I just leave it by itself. Sure, the battery will not run out that fast, but it will still run out. Even if I just leave it unattended for a few days, the battery will slowly drain. And I think my mind and my body works the same way. Sometimes it drains faster, but sometimes it drains slower, but it does drain eventually. And that's something that is always constant, that I do get physically and emotionally drained. So if I don't do, or if I miss my self-love daily practices, uh, and I let my physical drain go unchecked or emotional drain go unchecked, I will be running low on battery, on critical low energy. Um, and I think that's why I found it so important that when I'm thinking of self-love and self-care, it's not so much about, okay, what can I do to make me feel happy? Like, what can I do to make me feel joy? Or I also try to think about, okay, what can I do that will be good in the long run for my body and for my mind? What are the things that I can do that will make me feel rejuvenated and healthy? So, for instance, I practice martial arts, and I started it honestly because I watched a kung fu movie and the moves look really cool. I'm like, yeah, I want to be like Ip Man and Donnie Yen and Jackie Chan. So I joined it. But the more I practiced it, I realized how much content or happier I felt after the practice. Um, Same thing I feel about a hard workout. I dread going to a workout, but if I push myself and go to it, I feel happier afterwards. So I think just like my cell phone needs a charging station or a charger to charge at night, my physical body and my mind and my soul also needs these charging stations to rejuvenate and charge over time as I go through my day and get discharged.
Makes a lot of sense. And it seems like in some ways unfolds in a clear way out of self-love to me. Like if I love myself, then I'm going to take care of my body. Like myself includes my body, my mind, my spirit. So to me, that also I think when I first learned your systems, I had resistance to it because of the mechanistic quality of it. The way your language and engineering mind works is very different than my gardener mind and gardening for gardens approach. But I've learned to really appreciate it because I feel like the self-love is the soul in your system in a way. Like it is, love is at the center of the machine. And I think in the end, like, yes, organic living beings have a mechanistic quality to them in a way. They can be understood both as complex spiritual beings and also machines. Like there's something really powerful about the way a machine thinking simplifies the routine, simplifies the ideas. I think it can be really useful. I've grown to really appreciate it. These analogies because I think that I see it working for me when I think I've started using some of like the, one of your models is around thinking about the self as a car and like structuring maintenance like around how you would, the kind of maintenance I need every week, every month. So anyway, so I really resonated with that too. And I think that the way you approach it's, I find it really appealing. So keep it up, please.
No, yeah, no, thank you for verbalizing that and bringing in that distinction, because I'm sure a lot of our viewers, come from diverse backgrounds. Everybody would perceive the world differently. So there will surely be people who perceive the world through analytical engineering mindset as I do, and I'm sure there are people out there who see world in a more abstract, organic way, like you do from a gardening perspective. So it is really good that you have found a way to marry those two analogies together, and you've found a way to resonate with it. Uh, because my hope is that our viewers will have a similar experience as well, uh, understanding and perceiving this idea of self-love and self-care in a way that makes sense to them. Because at the end of the day, like you said, the self-love is at our center. We might be all different people, but we are all humans at the end of the day, and we have that innate desire for filling that love tank within us. So some of us are diesel cars and some of us are Teslas running on battery, but we all have that fuel tank that we need to fill. And the idea is that we can do it ourselves independently, uh, by keeping ourselves as a top priority. So I love that distinction. And yeah, thank you for reminding me of, like, I give a lot of analogies, so I tend to forget what I use, but the car analogy has absolutely been the best, because that is a good reminder for my forgetful brain to distinguish. It's like, okay, these are my daily maintenance or my daily practices. These are my weekly practices, and these are my monthly ones. And oftentimes, as you might imagine, I lose track of the monthly ones because they're so long. And I'm like, oh, I haven't done this in the past couple of months. Let me get back on that. So again, the car analogy is more uh, a support system for me, because I sometimes feel like I have a forgetful mind. So thank you for that reminder too.
Yeah.
Sharon, hey, it's Ari. I'd like to ask you, I have a lot of curiosity around your self-care practices. If you can share a little bit more on other self-care practices that maybe someone can do at home, maybe not martial arts or working out, something more soft. I'd be curious to know if you have any and what are the benefits of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, again, just going back to my distinction, the way I view self care, to me, self care is more corrective. So I actually created an app for myself, which is on my phone. And whenever I feel the need to perform self care, whenever I feel that, oh, I feel off center, I need to come back, I go in my app and I input what am I feeling at the moment. So, for instance, mad, afraid, anxiety, exhaustion, frustration. And when I input that, the app will tell me a list of activities that have worked for me in the past. So some examples, again, a lot of these activities are things that I can do in my home, because these are corrective measures that I want to take right now without having to rely on somebody else, or without having to rely on, oh, let me call somebody and make an appointment for a spa or make sure my martial arts school is open. So some of the examples are taking my hammock and taking a nap in my hammock in the park by the water fountain, where I can listen to the water, because I love water in general, and the sound of water. Some other examples are taking a hot bath in my tub and singing karaoke. Um, I also like doing box breathing exercises, and you might be aware of this. I learned this from my friend who was in the Navy SEALs, and apparently this is what the Navy SEALs use to lower the heartbeat and fall asleep quicker. So I do the box breathing. I do hug meditation in an indoor tent that's inside my home. I do journaling a lot, and as you can see from the background here, I love to paint. Uh, I feel that that is the quickest way for me to release any buildup of emotions, either anger or happiness, irrespective of positive or negative. So I do paint a lot. So, and the day I started thinking about it intentionally, what are the things that I can do right now in the next 5 minutes in my home without depending on other people? I found that there are so many things within my reach that I could tap into. And that is my idea when I teach self care or talk about these workshops. I empower people to think about these things in their daily lives, in their daily routines. Like, what are things that they can do in the moment in the next 5 minutes without drastically changing their lives? So that was a good question. Thank you for asking that, Ari.
Yeah, what a great list too. I have to follow up on one item. Did you say you do karaoke in the hot bath, or were those separate?
In the hot bath, while I'm in the bathtub, I will play my music on the speaker and I'll sing out loud. I have a terrible sense of tune. I'm more artistically inclined, but not vocally inclined. But I absolutely love singing. I won't sing in public, but I'll do that in the tub, and it just again another way of just like releasing some emotions that I might be harboring. Yeah,
Oh, I love that. That's really good. I'm gonna try that. I
yeah,
wanted to. It leads me to my next question too, which is
yeah,
playfulness. I know how important it is to you, and with the panda,
yes,
healing panda, and just the way you relate to all this. And
yep,
if you could say a little bit about, I mean, that's a great example of singing in the bath, but how
right, right,
playfulness, the value of playfulness, when it comes to self care.
yeah. I feel like playfulness is just who I am. I grew up as a quiet kid. I was the traditional quiet kid who read his books. But I think as I grew older and I discovered my hobbies and things that I love, I just found that this is just a part of me. And the more I have learned to accept myself and love myself, the more I'm able to allow myself to just show up as who I am. So the panda poster back there that is doing a belly bump, that is what I want to do most of the times with family and friends or people who are like near and dear to me. Like that's the world that I want to live in, where people would just greet each other with belly bumps. And I feel like playfulness has been an important tool in my journey of self healing and inner work as well. Because when I went into therapy, again, that incident in 2020 when I felt very lonely and detached, and I went into therapy and I started my work with men's circles, I found that it was very serious work, and it is. Um, and when I would talk to my therapist, I would see my therapist always having a serious look on their face, and I appreciated the sympathy and empathy at the time. I'm not saying that's wrong, but over time, I found that once I was past that stage, and once it was time for me to accept who I am, playfulness came into play. So playfulness allowed me to look at my trauma, things that happened to me in my childhood, as just experience. It's just something that happened to me, and playfulness allowed me to laugh at it or accept it in a good way. So I don't feel pity for myself or I don't feel like a victim. And that helped me come out of that mindset. Oh, why did this happen to me? And I strongly feel that playfulness helped me get to that stage, get past that, and that's why I appreciate it so much in my life today. And also at the same time, I've been told by people that they do enjoy my playful aura or my playful attitude when I lead circles or when I facilitated circles or when I lead my workshops. So that makes me feel validated, but it also makes me feel that people are not tolerating me. They're actually cherishing my playful vibe. It is actually helping them, and hence the term healing panda. Where it's like I can be the most playful, fun true version of myself, and it ends up healing people and helping people without me having to do anything. I'm just being myself. So that is a big part of me.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. I'll reflect that back. That I appreciate your playfulness, and you
Thank
mentioned it
you.
coming up in times that seem. You're welcome. It seems times that seem so serious, like trauma work or therapy work or men's circle, and but I found there is a great space for playfulness, when and with the good sense of not using it to escape, but to or make jokes. That was used to be. I used to use it as a defense mechanism. My sense of humor to get away from like hard topics, but that's not the way I see you using playfulness or how I've learned and experienced it in our men's circle together. It does seem to be a way to, like, I've learned that we can hold empathy and playfulness at the same time. We can hold compassion, or we can hold listening, or we can hold care in our in my system, and also still be playful in a way that doesn't make light of anything or make anyone feel lesser than. I think that's, and I see you modeling that really well. And I think it's really, it's a good reminder to me to maybe just loosen up a little bit sometime. Somebody, especially when it gets most serious or tense, when I feel my body constricting or tightening. I think playfulness can be an antidote to that for sure.
Yep, thank you for vocalizing that, Jake. Absolutely. That is such a good distinction that you pointed out. Yeah, when I'm talking about playfulness, I am not promoting that people make light of their serious situation or use humor as a way to deflect hard work. So thank you for bringing that up. Yeah.
I want to talk about some of your work that you're doing. You mentioned the circles you're leading and the way you're bringing your mission of self-care into the world. I want to hear some about how that's going, maybe starting from a bit more theoretical level of how do you teach self-care
Yeah.
and self-love? How is that something that can be conveyed to others?
Yeah. I've I've loved teaching, and it has been a part of my life. And in another life, several years ago, I used to tutor PhD and master's degree students, and I mostly taught math and physics. And then what I discovered from my tutoring experiences was that I enjoy subjects that are practical, and not theoretical, something that people can apply in their daily lives. So, for instance, math could be applied in dealing with personal finances, or building financial security. Physics can be applied in building some things, or in engineering that I do for my work. So when I discovered my passion for self-care and self-love and bringing that into the world, I wanted it to be practical and applicable, something that people can apply in their daily lives. So when I teach my self-care workshops, I have two goals. One, I design my workshops to be hands-on, something that people and students can practice, instead of having somebody just sit there and listen to me yap on and on and on, which I love to do. Uh, I want them to practice something and not just sit there and listen to me. And B, it also helps me make sure that my workshops are more practical and going away from the philosophical discussions. Nothing wrong with it, but that's just not my style. And lastly, my goal for each workshop is for people to leave with something tangible. Maybe it's a list, maybe it's a spreadsheet, maybe it's an app, maybe it's a piece of paper with scribbles on it, whatever, but something tangible that you can touch, read, see, and people can use in their daily lives, so that they can actually see a quantifiable difference in their lives after they made those changes or after they started doing self-love and self-care. So that have been some of my goals for how I teach my workshops.
Yeah, that seems to be a very sensible pedagogy. I think that idea that let's give people a practical, here you say, let's give people a practical progress, action items and steps forward. Because I think that that direction, and also is there, and like, imagine there's some accountability as well as part of your work too. I know that for me, and in our gold mining circle, we do stretches and we come out with goals for the week and uh, action items, I would say, for ourselves. We come up. So I'm hearing that it is a bit of an extension of that in a way of learning tools and creating something, a real follow through possibility is part of self love for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like the way I teach my workshops have been through circles. Um, and I've started a in-person circle in Charlotte, NC, and having people meet each other in that circle attaches that the side benefit of having that accountability. So when I'm teaching my workshops, I make myself available to people who might need me as an accountability partner. And that looks like me checking in with them maybe once a week or maybe once a month and make sure, see how they're doing, if they need anything else, and just making sure that they stay on track for the goals that they created for themselves. But also the circle that I created where people can meet each other and make new friends, they end up becoming accountability partners for each other. So it almost becomes like a big self-sustaining organism that is thriving and growing and nurturing each other. So it's beautiful to see how that's turned out.
I love that. And I think that act of showing up for one of those circles too, where the intention is self care, I think there's a cognitive shift that brings, or an energetic shift that would, um, whether you're not, whether you're, even if you're someone who doesn't feel like, uh, I have a lot of self love, if you're someone who has those stories like, I don't care for myself well, just the act of showing up for that circle and being in there with a bunch of people with the same intention, I feel like that will bring that into people. I think that will raise that identity of that I'm a self loving, self caring kind of person identity, which I think is necessary. Because I had a question coming up as you were talking of thinking about, oh, well, are there people who it's not right for? And I can't really think of, even if, even let's say you are someone who's like early in therapy, early in traumatized, these circles are still for you, right? They're really, I'm hearing they're like, the way I understand them, they'd be very inclusive, right?
Absolutely. So that was a big part of the foundational principle when I started the circle. I wanted it to be open for all. Of course, there are community guidelines that are in place to make sure that it remains a safe space. And as long as people are maintaining those community boundaries and creating safe space for other people, it is open for anybody and everybody. Whether you're in therapy, not in therapy, or whether you just started going to therapy, or if you have been in therapy for decades, if you want to learn about self-care and you want to do something about um, taking that first step to loving yourself, and you don't know where to start, where I was, I had heard about self-love, and I'm like, I just don't know what it means. Like, for sometimes when I listen to people talking about self-love, I'm thinking, I hope they're not talking about masturbating, because I've been doing that since puberty, and that's not doing a lot for me. So, and I had a wall, and I so I had to go through a lot of trials and error before I could unpack and untangle what self-love really means. So since I've already gone through that, other people don't have to go through the same. They don't have to reinvent the wheel or reinvent the fire. So this circle is for those people where you can just show up where you are today. Again, another big ideology that I'm a huge proponent of is you're enough as you are today. So I don't want people to come to my circle thinking that this is something that they need to do to get better. Coming to this circle is a way that people can show love to themselves as they are today. And again, like you were talking about how coming to a circle could mentally make a person have that sense of that, oh, I by showing up to this circle, I'm showing love for myself. That is absolutely true. I could sit here and talk about I love myself all day, but the way my mind is wired, I'm more of an action person over a words person. So me saying I love myself, or me telling myself in the mirror, I love you, Shirin, it might do something. But if I do an action, it's like, oh, I get my ass up and show up to this circle. And I ask myself, Shirin, why are you in this circle? And I tell myself, I'm here because of me. And that has a much more stronger impact on how I feel the self-love directed at me.
What say a little more about what it's like to be in a circle for people who are new
Yeah.
coming to the circle. How is it? What should people know coming into one of your circles?
So the self-care circle, it is very similarly formatted to a typical men's circle, except that it's multi-gender. So we refrain from using the masculine pronouns only. Like, we'll ask people what their pronouns are. And the idea is for people if people show up, they can either participate and share what's coming up for them, or they can just be a listener because it's their first time. A major part of the circle is going through the workshop that I've created for the day. So a lot of the topics that we talk about revolve around self-love and self-care, but it might also talk about off-tangent topics that are complementary to self-love. So for example, the 5 love languages. It is not exactly self-love, but it could tie into it because I use my love language as a way to show love for myself. So there might be some days where we talk about love languages. There might be some days where we talk about apology languages. Again, by the same author. So we spend the first half of the circle going through the workshop talking about it, and the last half we spend listening to people share anything that came up for them, and share anything that they have plans or goals for themselves on how they are going to use whatever they learn in the workshop into their daily lives and in their coming weeks. And then lastly, we spend time talking about our goals from the previous circle and see how it is working out for them, if they need more accountability or if they need any other support, either from me or from other people in the circle. So this is in general what a typical circle day would look like at my circles.
How can people get involved with the circle or connect?
Yeah. If you want to get in touch with me, like at the next solar eclipse, put a wet towel on your head. I'm just kidding. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and we'll share links and my IG handle. So, send us DM, slide into my DMs on Instagram or Facebook and connect with me. I'm a texter, so I'm usually quick to respond. And if you're in person in the Charlotte area, you're definitely welcome to come to one of our in-person circles. And if not, I also do virtual circles with the Mankind Project and the Gold Mining Circle. So you're welcome to join us there as well.
Yes, definitely. I want to stay connected to your work. And I know I see you regularly in Men's Circle, but I'm excited about the self-care, getting to experience some of your self-care work's been a real gift and really helpful to me. So I'd encourage people to follow Sharon and continue to stay in the loop with him. I also heard you were doing some public speaking coming up, right? Is there a festival coming up you mentioned?
Yeah, so outside of my circle, I also bring my workshops to psychology conferences or conventions or healing festivals. So the newest one that's coming up is it's called Soul Harmony Fest, and it will be in Charlotte in September next month. It's a 4-day weekend with healers, speakers, life coaches, counselors coming from different parts of the country and just gathering in one big festival. So I will be teaching a workshop on discovering your self-care routine. And again, all my workshops, including this one at the festival, are always free, and they're open to anybody who is interested in learning about self-care and self-love and interested in meeting people who are on the same journey of self-love as they are.
What's your vision for your work going forward? Do you have aspirations of how you want to reach more people or how you see it growing as over the coming years?
Yeah, in my mind, when I visualize what the work that I'm doing today, how it will yield and grow in the future, the way I see it, I'm looking at it like uh, an idea that I'm planting a seed in people's minds, and then they go and touch somebody else, and then it's just like a network of people. So I can only reach a certain amount of people in person in Charlotte, but let's just say I am able to touch 100 people, and it lands with 10 of them, and then those 10 people go and carry the same ideologies, the same wisdom, the same knowledge forward to other 100 people, and then it just like goes from there. So almost like a network of people, and that's how I see it growing. So, and the vision for me when I see, I'm a person who is optimistic about utopic world, and in this utopic world, I visualize people co-creating, coexisting together, where everybody practices self-love and self-care daily, where everybody is able to come from a place of abundance and contentedness every day. That's how I see it.
I love that vision. Yeah, I'm here for that. I want to support that in the world, and I know that 10 people from this podcast at least will want to connect and spread your message, because I think it's a fundamental one. It's a really important one. I'm hoping to catch a circle, get down to Charlotte at some point this fall, get to a circle too, and connect with your community going forward. But I just want to say it's been a pleasure talking to you today, Sharon, and I really enjoyed this. And just wanted to ask if there's anything else you wanted to add before we start to wrap up to our audience.
No, I just want to remind again. Thank you, Jake, for having me. This was a pleasure sitting with you and Ari and having this wonderful discussion about self love and self care, which is so near and dear to me. So thank you for saying that. I just want to close off on this message as a reminder to people that yes, self love and self care is important, uh, but also while you're on this journey and maybe it is easy for you to love yourself or maybe it is difficult, either way, just know that you are enough as you are today. Even if you're on a journey of self improvement and learning new skills, know that you are enough and you're worthy of love. So just want to say that to everybody listening to this podcast.
What a beautiful message. I support that message. And I think it's really amazing how self-love can be so much the root of service to going to that fourth garden, noticing that your self-love has led you to help many other humans. And your practices have allowed you, just reflecting back how your self-love has, I witness how it's helped make you a better family member, a better friend, a better partner, and what you're doing. I've heard you, and I see that in the world and in your work. So I just want to honor that.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Shirin. That was my conversation with Shirin Biswas. Thank you so much for listening. Ari, I want to pass it over to you for our traditional closing health tip. What do you have for us today?
The health tip I got is actually a practice. This practice is called metta, or loving kindness meditation. When I first heard about metta, I thought, oh, very cool, nice. I'll try it sometime. But the moment I tried loving kindness meditation, my worldview of love changed. It's really a practical way to embody what self-love is and how to give it unconditionally in about 20 minutes. This health tip is about metta, and I recommend you try it one time. I'm going to put a link in the description of a practice that I recorded myself, so I have a regular audio to go towards. But if you were to take something out of this health tip, is this: according to the practice of metta, you meditate on your own love first, sending yourself positive affirmations and words of unconditional love. I am happy, or may I be happy. I'm healthy, or may I be healthy. And I am loved, or may I be loved. Right? You say one of these, multiple. You get into it. And then you extend that out to someone who's easy to love with the same words of affirmation, over to someone that you don't know yet, with the same level of intensity of love with words of affirmation, to someone who's hard to love, and feel the healing that comes with unblocking your heart and creating a radiant heart. And finally, to the whole world. So the health tip is find ways, whether it's metta or another way, to deepen the self-love practice and the self-care practices in your day-to-day life.
Thanks so much for adding that spiritual dimension to this conversation too. I really appreciate that, Ari. And thanks again for everyone for joining us today and listening. Keep on growing.